All right, good evening, Dr. Hill. Here we go for presentation number 2. So, the Sony hack. Um, Here we go. So, who was Sony and why were they targeted? So, everyone knows Sony Pictures Entertainment. They're a major filmmaker and television production company. Somewhere in 2014, they produced The Interview, which was a satire mocking the assassination of North Korean leader Kim Jong Un. Yeah, because of, they mocked them, and because of the nature of how North Korea is, they condemned the film and it issued warnings. Sony is a key player in the entertainment industry. They're wide-reaching influence all over the world. So this uh, mocking of Kim Jong was seen all over the world. Um, it the decision to produce the movie drew big international backlash, and North Korea views it as an act of aggression and insult. In the timeline of the attack, the breach became public on November 24th, and employees found messages threatening to leak sensitive information unless Sony complied with the hackers' demands. And the attack was methodically executed, and malware rendered many of Sony computers inoperable. Um, and like it says, 2014, they saw the messages on their screens. The malware called Distover was used to wipe their systems, and the group Guardians of Peace claimed responsibility. What did they do? They used a standard spear phishing to gain network credentials, which is a standard method of attack by a lot of hackers. They prey on the vulnerability based on, poor training of employees within companies that they target. Once inside, they installed the malware to navigate and extract files, and they exfiltrated data over weeks before they sent out a final destruction phase. Um, Again, spear phishing is a commonly used targeted attack, often involving fake emails that trick users into giving up credentials. Once inside, they moved through the system, they stole the data, they were undetected. Once you get, privileges from somebody within the company, it's hard for anyone to really catch on to that because it looks like normal operation. Uh, the type of data that was exposed, employees' personal data, social security, salaries, health data, unreleased movie data like from Fury, the World War II movie, and then Annie, internal emails showing, executive misconduct, things like cheating, talking smack about each other, so on and so on. Legal documents and business strategies. The damage was pretty widespread. Hackers leaked sensitive personal data, again, about 6,000 people, internal communications that went really far to the top of the executive, and of course, the unreleased films that were eventually pirated. Fury and Annie came to theaters, but they were still pirated. Uh, Beyond that, because the data was just made public. Um, and of course, it exposed, personal and corporate vulnerabilities by, the spear phishing is a personal vulnerability because, the hacker is relying on the cunning that they create in their attack, the way they put their phishing attack together to prey on the inexperience of a targeted employee. Who was behind it? Like I said, FBI cited the evidence as North Korean involvement. Similar malware has been used and tactics have been used in prior DPRK linked attacks. The IP addresses and coding patterns also trace back to North Korea. North Korea denied the involvement, but of course, the FBI knew better, and it looks like they've been kind of up to their same old type of tactics. So it was kind of easy for the FBI to just be like, okay, it sounds like these guys did it. They they reused malware that they had used before in specific types of attacks that they used in prior attacks. Fallout, financial damage, 15 to 100 million in losses reported, operation disruption, employee morale was in the gutter, and of course, because of all those misconduct emails, the trust was definitely damaged. Um, so pretty tough attack laid on by North Korea for these guys. And of course, another financial disaster was the interviews. The theatrical release was canceled, which cost them even more money. So the gist of that, Sony faced massive financial and operational disruption. The cancellation of the interview raised serious questions about freedom of speech and cyber terrorism. Internally, it took months for operations to and morale to recover. Freedom of speech thing, I believe, is basically because their emails were exposed, and because of that, people were talking about other people, or they were talking about sensitive topics, and they thought that they could trust the privacy of their emails, whereas they could not, and it was all made public. Repercussions beyond that, the United States condemned the attack and imposed more sanctions. Heightened alert across film and tech industries to basically say, hey, don't do stuff like this where you know, make fun of a world leader. As much as we dislike North Korea and how ridiculous they are, they still have capabilities. Um, Maybe not physical military might in regard to like being on par with the United States, but they still do underhanded things. And of course, like every single attack that happens, it always quote unquote raises awareness of nation state cyber threats, which they still occur. Um, of course, Sony hack set a precedent for international cyber conflict. It showed again, just kind of like Stuxnet did, showed that digital actions could trigger geopolitical consequences. So digital actions have real world consequences. And again, like I said before, just like with every one of these attacks, companies always have to reconsider their threat models. Um, and the same thing as always too is security takeaways from the Sony hack is regular network audits are always critical. Employee training on phishing is essential, and that should never stop. Backup and recovery plans must always be in place, and cybersecurity needs to be a board level priority, meaning from the top down, from the CEO down to the lowest person. You know, they need to be aware that this type of stuff can happen to them. Um, Cybersecurity can no longer be considered just an IT department only issue. It must be ingrained into every person that has access to any type of network, um, you know, function. Like if you're on a phone that's supplied by the company, or if you're on a laptop or a workstation or something like that, if you have any of that access, you need to be aware of these things, or this type of stuff can happen. And why does it matter today? Threats have evolved, tactics are similar, but people often forget about, how people do things like this. You know, again, with Sony making fun of Kim Jong, this kind of highlights the dangers of how you can provoke somebody by making fun of them, especially on a platform that has uh, global attention. Like Sony makes movies, they go out to the entire world, people see this, and now, of course, we already think that Kim Jong Un is a clown anyway because he's evil, but at the same time, now there's a movie about him, and millions of people are seeing it, and the possibility of his people seeing that other countries are calling him a failure or whatever they're doing, you know that's even worse in his eyes, because he has absolute control over his people. um, and because of things like this, these type of activities that companies do where they open their mouth about stuff like this, they have to worry about being hacked by either a nation state attacker or someone who's a hacktivist. Maybe a company has like a far right leaning, or maybe they have religious beliefs and they make it known publicly, and maybe a liberal hacktivist, disagrees with that, and now they have become a target. Things like that. So companies have to be, neutral about things. And the Sony hack wasn't necessarily an isolated event. It is, it marked a shift in cyber warfare. As entertainment, politics, and technology continue to intersect, organizations must remain vigilant to protect both assets and values. And what I mean by that, it wasn't an isolated incident. You know, they've been hacked before. Um, Other companies, other major companies have been hacked. And there's news articles about these things where this data comes out at the end of how it happened and what could have been done to prevent it. But these other companies don't necessarily listen to that stuff, and then it ends up happening to them as well. So that this stuff is still important to follow along with. Like, people need to pay attention to this. They need to incorporate, the learnings from these actions into their teaching for their company, so people don't fall prey to this stuff. In my references, I made the word soup cloud, um, just for the presentation, so that's open source. Anyway, I enjoyed making this presentation. I enjoyed the Stuxnet one as well, and I hope you like it too, Dr. Hill. And have a good night.